So now we come to the Vaibhashika view of the two truths. And so the fourth line of the fourth chapter of the Abhidharmakosha says things which mentally destroyed or dissected by the mind, such as pots or water, are relative. All else besides is ultimately existent. So as this says, any coarse thing which can be smashed to pieces with a hammer or dissected into parts by the mind, so that the mind which apprehended that coarse appearance no longer identifies it as such, belongs to relative truth. Then concerning absolute, any coarse material thing or state of consciousness can be broken down into its ultimate constituents, which are individual particles or moments. Therefore, the partless particles, which are the ultimate constituents of coarse things, and the indivisible moments of consciousness, which are the ultimate constituents of mental phenomena, are said to be absolute. So, in this text that we're studying, remember the root text is the three principal paths. The ninth line of the three principal paths says you may master renunciation and bodhicitta, but unless you have the wisdom perceiving reality, you cannot cut the root of cyclic existence. For that, make efforts and ways to perceive dependent origination. So unless you have that very profound, correct view about suchness, unless you have the wisdom that perceives reality or ultimate truth, you can strive to perfect renunciation and the wish for enlightenment along with the other method practices as much as you like, but you can't cut the root of cyclic existence, which is grasping to a self, because these practices alone do not act as a direct antidote for that grasping. So if you think of, in terms of dependent origination, like all phenomena, outer form, inner form, do not appear without any causes, nor are they caused by a causeless and permanent creator such as the self, time, or God. In fact, they arise through the coming together of their own particular causes and conditions. So if you think about a seed being planted, after some time the seed becomes a seed with leaves, and then it becomes a sapling, then a small tree, and then a mature tree, and then a mature tree with fruit. So this, think in terms of, this is back to that discussion of permanent versus impermanent, and whether we're dealing with changing things or unchanging things. So all outer phenomena arise through dependent origination in the manner of, the illustration of the seed that I just explained. Then all inner phenomena, meaning the aggregates, or the skandhas, those layers, those parts of us, form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors. The supreme, intermediate, and lesser beings arise through dependent origination of the 12 links. Now, outer phenomena, like we said, is related to the senses and our reaction or our perception of our contact with the senses. And it requires 6 related conditions. You have the earth element, which supports, the water element, which binds, the fire element ripens, and the wind element expands, the space element accommodates, and time is another element there, and it gradually increases or gradually changes. So in the 12 links of dependent origination, when we see how the consciousness moves, how awareness moves, and becomes the basis for the next link in the 12 links, it will start to make a little bit more sense how our consciousness is creating and manifesting our physical form, our environment, and our experiences. So we start with, imagine you've got a clock. I don't have an illustration here to show you a clock, and start at 12 o'clock. And we're going to label that ignorance. And that means it's a fundamental misknowing of the truths and the delusion of mistakenly perceiving the skandhas or the parts as a self. Okay? That is the basis that I like to think of ignorance in the 12 links as my calibration of consciousness. Okay? And my calibration of consciousness is from that I make karma. And karma, at a minimum, starts with mental formations, movement of thought, okay, movement of mind. As long as there's ignorance, there is the formation of karma, positive, negative, and neutral. And this forms the rebirth that we have in the various realms. Now, consciousness is the third link. That would be at 2 o'clock position. And those karmic formations recalibrate the consciousness. They kind of, the movement of mind that we have kind of recalibrate our position, and they cause the consciousness of the next existence. So as those dominoes are cascading into the next moment, that's like the vibration of that domino affects the next domino and the next domino and the next domino, okay? And so the consciousness propels one towards the next existence, and this is called impelling consciousness. And the consciousness that is led to that particular state, once the condition, once all the conditions have come together, is known as the consciousness of the impelling result. So these two aspects of consciousness are counted as a single link together, since they establish the link between two lives. Now the next link, which would be at the 3 o'clock position, is called name and form. And this refers to the 5 skandhas, the 5 heaps, or the 5 aggregates, however you want to call them. So by the power of consciousness, one is linked to a womb, and then the body develops the form, and the 4 name skandhas, which are sensation, perception, formation, and consciousness, come together. These are the basis for the next link, which is called contact, and the 6 sense spheres. The 6 sense spheres, or the 6 senses, refer to the 6 inner sense faculties. And here they're including mind, they're including thinking, the brain as an organ of thinking. Contact is the next link, and it's at like the 5 o'clock position. And this is just the coming together of objects, a sense faculty, and a consciousness. Okay, that's all that contact means. And there's no virtue or non-virtue there. The sensation or feeling link, which is at the 6 o'clock position on the clock, arises from contact, some kind of sensation from contact, and it's either pleasurable, painful, or neutral. And again, this just being the experience of feeling has no virtue or non-virtue. It's the next motion, the next link that we have, which is called craving, and this is at the 7 o'clock position. And it's, as our from that feeling of pleasure or pain, there develops a desire to not be separated from pleasurable sensations and to be free from painful sensations. So it's a movement of mind. And if you're paying attention, this is kind of like, link 2 and 3 again. But this is a little bit more detailed in what's happening. So that energy is growing for us to have this craving. And that craving, as it increases, it develops into what's called grasping. And that's at the 8 o'clock position on the clock. And it's an actively striving never to be separated from what is pleasurable and to avoid what is painful. Now, this is the basis for the next link, the 9 o'clock position, which is becoming. And through this, grasping, one acts with body, speech, and mind to either appropriate or, to repel from the thing we don't like. And so this grasping grows, and it makes us take action. So you've got a movement of mind, then you have a movement of body. And then once you've had that movement of body, then that's when, when you've had the movement of body, speech, and mind, that's when the karma has been created that determines one's next existence. Okay, and then this is the foundation. This is the link to support the 10 o'clock position, which is rebirth. And through the power of this becoming, one is reborn in a particular birthplace whenever the necessary conditions are assembled. And then you finally have the last link, which is old age and death. So following rebirth, there's this continual process of aging as the aggregates change and develop, and eventually there is death when the aggregates finally cease. So that's the 12 links in a nutshell. And so we have 6 related conditions called, we have ignorance, craving, and grasping, and those are the three links that are disturbing emotions. They arise with the cooperating conditions of the six sense faculties and their respective sense object. Now, the same conditions assist in the arising of the two links of karma, which are mental formations and becoming. And the other seven links, which are known as the bases of suffering, arise with the assistance of the six elements as cooperating conditions. And those six elements are, like I said, the earth element, which is solidity. The water element is liquid. Fire element, through which your digestion occurs. The wind element is the respiratory system. The space element of the body cavities and consciousness. So these work together. If you get an idea, if you do a little bit more looking into these 12 links, it really gives you an idea of how we, this is an involuntary flow and movement of consciousness, of awareness. So we want to study and bring our mind to a point where the ignorance is reduced, and therefore the karmas that we make are not as severe. Now, let's look at 5 special features here. The sprout, concerning the movement of the seed and so on and so forth. The sprout, for our example, arises after the seed has ceased and not while the seed is present unceasingly. The phenomena, therefore, are not unchanging. They're not permanent. The sprout, the second feature is that the sprout doesn't arise from a discontinuity. The seed has to have ceased completely. The cessation of the seed and the growth of the sprout occur simultaneously, like the two sides of a set of scales or a seesaw. One goes up as the other goes down. And since there's not an interruption of the continuum, there's no discontinuance. And we want to remember, we're talking about things from the Vaibhashika point of view here. The seed and the sprout are not one in terms of their identity or their function, so the former is not transformed into the latter. All right, that was point number 3. Point number 4 are tiny seeds can grow into enormous trees, and so therefore small causes can produce large effects. That coincides with the second principle of karma, le pelchua, that karma increases. And then the 5th point is that wheat seeds produce wheat crops and virtue produces happiness. So there's a correlation between cause and effect. They're the same continuum. So now let's look at how these links occur over lifetimes. The 12 links can be explained as a process occurring over 3 different lifetimes. So you have the past cause of ignorance and karma lead to the result of one's consciousness of the present life, and the links up until becoming, through which one accumulates the karma through the negative emotions of craving and attachment. That will lead to a future rebirth. Okay, so you've got 1, the past cause of ignorance and karmic formations. That leads to 2, the consciousness of the present life, and then 3, your future rebirths. And one takes birth according to one's karma and experiences the sufferings of old age and death. Now, if we look at these links over 2 lifetimes, you have the ignorance of one's previous incarnation and the karma created through the power of craving and attachment, and those cause 2, one to take another rebirth, and in that present life there arises the links from consciousness through to becoming and old age and death. So this is something to spend a little bit of time on and looking at, analyzing, tearing it apart as much as you can. Look at the Wheel of Life. You can Google a picture of the Wheel of Life, and it shows you the movement, these 12 links, and they have some illustrations that coincide with the different or symbolic of the different points on the clock.